Let's talk about Star Trek acronyms PDQ or DSC. Right? Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live. Bingo. Number 217. Remember 217, gang, because 217 is next door to 47, right? I got a surprise for you. Not on the anniversary show we didn't have last April. Not on an even numbered like 250 or 200 or 300. No, right here on good old episode 217, you all get to be witnessing the debut of our new logo. Yay! We're going to retire old Mr. 2017 original. Isn't that awesome? Thank you, Scott, for designing this with me. Yes, it's the new look of Trekland Tuesdays Live. We're still connecting the dots, though. We're still going to bring you some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in everything Star Trek going on right now. Hopefully not the same old you're hearing everywhere else, just as we do every Tuesday. So if you're a veteran, don't be thrown by the new logo. It's part of the new look here. I mean, a little new look. What kind of new look, right? It's still Trekland HQ. I'm just so glad everybody's with us today. If you are new, then yay. You're new with us this week. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, look, we had some great news Friday. 2 panels this year for virtual Comic-Con at Home. I had a panel late in the day about space law and space trees and what's coming up and around the bend and the overlap with what we see in sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek, The Expanse, Firefly. If you didn't catch it, it's right there on YouTube. You can get the links on my site at LarryNemecek.com. But of course, the big headliner earlier in the day, for some reason, was rolling out the cast for the first time, really, letting us hear from them for Star Trek Prodigy. They had a full half hour. And then about 20 minutes with Star Trek Lower Decks. CBS Animation, Paramount Plus knows what side of the Star Trek bread their fortunes are buttered on. But it was great to see the Hageman brothers and Ben Hibon, now I know how to say his name, talking about their show with all the voice cast, young and more veteran. And then to see the Lower Decks gang, part of them. All kinds of teasers. My brethren and sisterin around the YouTube world, podcast world, if everybody's broken it down, you've seen the trailers, you've seen the teasers, yay, good on them. If I see something missing, I'll pop in. But we're going to have the debut of Lower Decks here on August 12th. It's just around the corner. It's just a couple of weeks. So we're off and running on this. And you know that after those 10 weeks are up, something else, Prodigy maybe, will finally be ready to pick up the slack and run. No overlap, but then no gaps either, with dual showing on Nickelodeon as well as Paramount Plus, which I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see a young kids show on Nickelodeon beyond the bounds of Paramount Plus. It's not quite the shackle that we were, but still, Nickelodeon is on many more TVs and many more devices than Paramount Plus is. All of that being said, with all this excitement and yeah, all the kind of online buzz that Parrot Analytics loves to measure, I saw this pop up once again. This old, I thought it's a great thing to talk about this week. But somewhere in the last 10 years or so, since everything's become calcified thanks to social media and everybody talks about everything all the time, not just when we happen to pick up a book in our quiet own solitude and think about it, this whole sub-industry of Star Trek abbreviations, acronyms, if you will, code phrases. Now, kiddies, there was a time when there were no Star Trek. It was the time when there was no bloody A, B, C, or D, and there was Star Trek. And if you wanted to shorten Star Trek, you said Trek. And there was a time when if you wanted to distinguish between Star Trek and Star Wars, you didn't say Trek and Wars because wars could be, but people, the Interstat set, the letters of the letterzine crowd would say Strek and Swar, S, capital T, R-E-K, and capital S, capital W, A-R-S. And I still will use, they're handy. I will still talk about Strek and Swars when it fits. But then came 1986, 1987, and all of a sudden we had Star Trek The Next Generation. And there was a huge about what to do with this. There was a big impetus, which is funny because I've heard Kelvin timeline Kurtzman era if you want to call it that, Trek called this. But in 1986-87, there was an impetus to say New Trek, N-U-T-R-E-K, and show that from Interstat letters. But that didn't find any traction because we had just lived through the new Coke, blow up, marketing disaster. And for those of you who, I guess, don't remember the new Coke, old Coke disaster in marketing and sales and PR, Google it, okay? It's hysterical. But new Coke went away. And people did not want that same fate to befall New Trek. And so people were grasping for something other than to say New Trek and the other side of the coin, Classic Trek, because no one wanted to call Classic Trek Classic Coke and have that confusion. One's a show, one's a beverage, but the connotation with it. It was a big thing. Trust me, gang. It was a big thing in 86 and 87. You just didn't want that angst. You just didn't want that in the zeitgeist connected to the new Trek. There was enough mystery and resolve and enough controversy from the loud 10%. There was enough going on keeping this new show up and going and buoyant, the new Star Trek, without getting into the zeitgeist weirdness of the Coke debacle. But eventually, someone latched on to calling the next generation TNG. And in that spirit, they figured someone, I'd love to find out the person, someone started calling the original series TOS. And all of a sudden, it clicked. It made such total sense. TNG and TOS. Because saying ST, it didn't roll off your tongue. It just looked clunky. And OST, I don't know, that reminds me of something from World War II. I don't know, the Office of Strategic Tactics. I don't know. It was just kind of odd. OST was also the Germanic word for East. But eventually, about that time, we very quickly evolved TNG and TOS. Now, it's funny because when I got to Paramount in 5th season, Next Generation, to work on the companion, I realized that no one at the studio, no one on the stages, no one working on the show called their show TNG. Everybody called it Next Gen, which I get. Next Gen is 2 short syllables. Next Gen, original series. It was great. But now I say Next Gen, but for a long time I was championing saying TNG. TOS was what it was. Somewhere along the way, someone went, well, if TOS works, let's call the animated series TAS. So a few people were still fighting, people that were even aware of it, we're still quibbling over the canon thing or not, and whether Gene was right or not. And whatever you do, Yesteryear was written by Dorothy Fontana. So wherever you were on the animated series, it wasn't even a debate. It was kind of a snoozer for the longest time. It wasn't on Nickelodeon anymore. But there weren't tapes. When there were tapes and then DVD, then it became a hot seat issue again. And now, of course, it's settled, right? But it was a very elegant solution. TNG, TOS, TAS. Okay, what's the next show? DS9. Well, you said it. You just said it. DS9. Bang. Problem solved. Never a moment's notice look back on DS9. And then came Voyager. Now, bear with me, gang, because I'm setting this up to go where some have gone before. Here comes Voyager, and some of us are going, do we really want to say STV? No, that's confused with Star Trek V. And so the back before people thought these had to be acts of Congress, the quasi-official style at the time in the beginning from the studio and from pocketbooks from Simon & Schuster for the print was VOY, V-O-Y, which just looked god-awful. It sounds god-awful if you actually pronounce it out loud. And between the Okudas and the Encyclopedia and moi working in the communicator, because that was about it back in the day, within the year, I championed VGR. Now, I know, you're going to say, but VGR was in motion picture. And that's what some people said back then. But in the first season, I said, I am not. Voy looks god-awful. I am not saying that. I am not writing that. Voy looks so voy. I'm writing VGR. VGR. I might say VGR, but it's about the math, people. It's the power of math, people. VGR was in 1 2-hour movie. We're supposed to have 176 episodes of Voyager by the time it's done. By the time it's done, and when we get the long view of all this, you see a V word that looks vaguely like VGR you're going to think of Voyager. You're not going to think of the creature from the motion picture, which goes back and forth on the popularity scale anyway. Now, this is before, yes, the director's edition, before the upresing, before motion picture came back onto the radar screens and then went away, and now it's back. Yay. But what we did was, hey, you look at my 7 years of communicator. If there's a need, and we don't live and die by these things, people forget. The more we concordize, like I did, and the more we encyclopedize, and now, memory alpha, the more we have use for that shortened form, the more it's out there. But by a year or two, we'd all converted to VGR. And if you say that out loud, wait, I'm sorry, did you say VCR? No, I did not. You weren't paying attention. We're talking Star Trek. And guess what? Within 10 years, that was a moot point. So no, VGR, VCR. I will not say voy. I will not write voy. Voy looks very voyish. It just looks stupid. But that was a one-word title. That was a one-word post-colon title, the first one Star Trek had. I didn't see anything established. I saw the impetus. It was a horrible choice. We made another choice. That was it. For some reason, that was settled law, as I say in the legal world, until the last 5 years or so, until we had the quiet generation that grew up in the fallow years and didn't know that's where that was, that weren't reading the encyclopedia, weren't reading the concordance, I mean, the communicator. Then along comes Enterprise. Okay, Dr. Trek, you say, now what? It's a one-word title. Well, what do you say? ENP? ENT? I know. I ate my words. We just said int. It looks god-awful, but it doesn't look near as bad as voy. Int, if you're talking in the Star Trek realm, if you start to say any word starting with E, it's a 47% chance you're going to say Enterprise anyway. So we just swallowed our pride and our sensibilities and the visceral reaction to that. And I just silently cursed everybody who wanted to give Star Trek series one-word titles. And we just went with int. But there was no rhyme or reason already, right? None of these titles started with an S or an ST. Just saying. That was kind of a given. And then, movies are their own thing. I refuse to assign Roman numerals to anything after 6 because they didn't have them. But as a short form, this thing about having the Kelvin movies be an Arabic number versus a Roman numeral for the Berman, for the originals and / Bermans. Okay, fine. But I will never give the TNG movies a Roman numeral. That's just not the way. And they just have title acronyms and whatever. They're just STG and FC and INS and NEM. And yes, it's not my autobiography, is Nemesis NEM. And you know what? Don't care about those being inelegant first syllables because they're just a movie, and how often are you going to talk about them in the big picture? Now, the series are what are claiming the attention on. The very fact that we're even talking about this as a subject matter is just insane. This used to be Arcana, right, for the 2 a.m. con room party discussion or something, or the last 2 minutes of a panel that you're wishing would hurry up and get over. And then came the end of the fallow years and the new rule that almost no new Star Trek series could be more than one word in its actual title. And we get Discovery. Not only do we get Discovery, but we get the era of social media and trolling, and paid or otherwise. We get all the division, that lovely social media, and reinforcing our worst instincts to satisfy an algorithm, because that's what you're fed day after day. Don't dare click down that path, because that's what you'll get. It's magnetic. And so the great, on the surface, just on the surface. Well, before that, actually, we'd had the Kelvin, we'd had the JJ movies debacle. And by this time, acronyms had become a thing. And dear old licensing, my friend John Van Sitters had stepped in. He was polling. He was taking a poll for reinforcement to get ideas. After the second movie, STID, I love calling it STID. Like, what do we call this? Because JJ Trek and JJ Prize was wearing thin. And it was obvious that he was not going to keep doing hands-on with this universe. So Kelvin eventually, there were some ideas I remember floating by. The alternate universe, there are many alternate universes in Star Trek. That's not going to cut it. It's the alternate universe. It's preeminent among alternate universes in Star. Oh yeah, what about the Mirror universe? Or excuse me, the Terran universe, now that we call it. What about that? So the Kelvin timeline, the Kelvin universe, the Kelvin timeline, that's, whatever. Everybody's still kind of fuddled about that, but that's, if we ever get a fourth movie again that happens in the Kelvin universe, we'll see. And now you've got the whole argument that it wasn't even the Kelvin that was the pivot point of that timeline anyway. Excuse me. We should just call it the, I don't know, the not Iowa universe. That was a side issue, but reflecting the ups and downs of the movies, I've kind of even forgotten that. There was one great acronym I can never go back to. It was like TKL, the Kelvin, TKT, the Kelvin alternate timeline, the KAT. I forget exactly what it was. There was one I saw fly by that I really liked. It's escaped me now. But then again, it's just the Kelvin movies. There's only 6 hours of them on screen. But yes, then came Discovery. Then came the whole No, you're not going to name a series. You're not going to acronymize, abbreviate a series DIS, because people will diss on DIS. Okay, you got that. But then, of course, the biggie was good old STD. Ha ha ha, what a joke. Well, no, because nothing of all the wackiness of this whole little art and science, no one had ever started a series off with STD. We didn't have STV for Voyager. We didn't have STE for Enterprise. I never understood that. It was total. That's why that totally became a troll alert symbol. If you wanted to legitimately criticize the show, then don't color your actions before that. This is a whole chapter in trolling fandom downfall headlines, discussion. This could be a panel series about what's represented by that. And yes, I know there are a lot of naive fans who stumble into online world and they don't know. They're just innocently coming along, even if it's their first Trek, especially. And STDing. But basically, STD is a signal that is about to be followed by 19 minutes of rant for the billionth time, repeated in the same space. And most people are going to ignore you anyway, so why bother? If you really wanted to convince people of your side, why are you slamming the door in their face before they even start? That's that issue. But we're still back to square one. What do we call the thing? The studio, for the first time that I can remember, led by licensing, announced our code for this is going to be DSC. Okay, fine. It's their show. It's that doing it. Am I advocating against free speech? And if you want to go troll and critique and have no one pay attention to you except the 17 other people that believe the same way you do forever and ever and ever, am I going to outlaw calling it STD? No. Just like so many other aspects of life now, you do have freedom of choice to do a certain action unless you endanger others. We're about to get a reminder of what endangering others looks like. But as long as it's only affecting you, no. However, everyone else has the freedom to completely ignore your sorry self if they disagree with you. So, as Will Rogers said, what's the definition of liberty? Well, you can get no more liberty than you give, right? So DSC, the studio decided it. Fine. It's not DIS. It's not STD for all those reasons. But for all those reasons, it's an acronym. It's internal letters of the name. And stop calling the shows by one word. Stop naming these series with one-word titles. What's up next on the list? Picard. Oh. Okay, not only is it one word, it's only 6 letters. Are we really going to call it PIC? We're not calling it STP. That's an oil additive, okay? Number one, that's an oil additive. I don't care if Andrew Granatelli doesn't still do the commercials and they don't sing the little STP jingle. It's STP. It's the razor's edge. So yeah, are you going to call that Picard PIC? Or are you going to call it PCD? I was close to wanting to call it PCD. Picard, and omit the vowels and just go with PCD, just so you didn't have to call it PIC, which, sounds like it's a what is a PIC is a penalty in some sports. It's PIC anyway. If you want to say you're picking the grapes, I don't care. Maybe that's a vibe. I don't know. For better or for worse, PCD didn't take off. Maybe it sounds too close to PCP. PVC, maybe that's an issue with it. I've kind of decided that pick is going to be Picard like int is enterprise. At least it's easier to say pick than it is enterprise. Of course, writing it is no big deal. Picard. Strange New Worlds. Thank you. It's just sad that we don't even have to do. People are looking to Strange New Worlds to be the panacea and the savior to return back to mostly standalone storytelling, mostly planets of the week, mostly morality plays wrapped up in an hour. And the fact that it's also bringing us salvation from this ridiculous acronym discussion is just the cherry on top. But yay, SNW. And then here we go, lower decks. If you're keeping your 3 pattern, that obliterates the need to even call it LD, which is learning disabled. Why would you? Okay, that's opening the door up to all the STD people, isn't it? If they really want to snark, except everybody, 90% of fandom loves lower decks, even if only 10% thought they would. So yeah, LDS. A joke with the LSD LDS line from Star Trek 4, which has nothing to do with it directly, but there you go. LDS. I was about to recommend, and I did say, how about LDX? And it's industrial. Lower decks, LDS, LDX, and then you get away from the LSD. Because the other thing is LDS is still Latter-day Saints, which is what the Mormons call themselves. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and LDS is their own in-house shorthand for that name, for Latter-day Saints. LDS, which is the basis of the joke. Everybody remembers the LSD part of it. But the real joke is the LDS. That's Mormons. That was the whole Gillian Kirk Spock joke in there. But apparently that's not a concern. Apparently in Utah, people will just be confused when you talk about how much you love all 10 episodes of LDS. So it's LDS. That's it. I would have liked LDX. Maybe that looks too industrial. Like the Chessie System Railroad as CSX, that kind of thing. But no, we're there. And that brings me down to the great new show, Prodigy. I saw this leaping up again. I saw this acronym discussion leaping up again, just watching people talking about Lower Decks and Prodigy. And if you're on my mailing list, and if you're not, why not? LarryNemecek.com. LarryNemecek.com. Just go and get on my mail list. Once or twice a month, unless it's open house time or Christmas season. And I often do a poll survey, as many of you know. We get enough to get a pretty decent sample. So I asked this question last week. What do you think the 3-letter abbreviation for Prodigy should be? And I started off, and I gave 3 options. I'm not able to make it open-ended when it's in newsletter form, when it's on an email. I gave STP as an option, Star Trek Prodigy, even though not only is that still the oil additive STP, is the racer's edge, but we didn't do it for Picard. Why would we do it for Prodigy? Then the fallback is PRO. Do you really want to go through eternity calling a Star Trek series pro, like all the rest of them were amateurs? Do you really want to confuse other people outside Trek world calling something pro? And it's like, what's like at the amateur side? It's the pro-am? Do you have a combined tournament? Do you really want to call it pro? My thing, akin to PDX or LDX, is PDG, Prodigy. Now, I realize this is an uphill battle. I realize I'm not running around and putting up billboards and blanketing the inner tubes with this. Once again, if you ask me, because of the issues with everything else, you can't call it STP. Some people will start confusing it with Star Trek Picard, who don't even know about the oil additive that used to blanket the airways in commercials. And everybody had their little STP stickers everywhere. That would be funny, though, is to have STP stickers amongst your Star Treks, and people wonder if it's red and blue and white. And anyway, I just can't see calling a show pro. Not even for the same reasons that I gag when I see calling Voyager Voy. And pro is a word, it's a useful thing, but it's so vague and it's so open-ended and it's so to me bound to confusion for people when you break out of Trek world. And PDG may look weird, but Prodigy, PDG, it's close to the word. And I'm sorry, if you're going to do this, leave out the vowels. Leave out the vowels and shrink. I've probably missed one that we would have done that with. Yeah, that's what I would have done lower decks as LDX, but we're doing it as LDS. So there's your precedent. I say we. For once, the studio chimed in with something, and fine, yay. Oh, I never told you the results of the poll. So here's what people said. And I said a very brief explanation of where this was coming from. So I knew PDG was going to hit people out of the blue. So of the poll, the leader, it was fairly close, actually. STP got 40.5%, PRO got 32.4%, and PDG got 27%. So STP is problematical. Not only is it an oil product, but how do you not confuse that with Picard for some people if they're new? You know, it's like after Michael came up with names for characters like Quark, Quark and Nog, it's like licensing is saying, would you please not do characters that can't be trademarked, guys? Please don't use scientific words for character names, especially your regulars. So there we are. Section 31 will be easy. It'll be S31. Boom. It'll be done. Enough said. It'll be the easiest thing since DS9. And yes, we've had numbers and titles, so get off that high horse if that seems to strike a... Watching the reactions and the sidebar comments to Prodigy, most of which focused on the actual show coming out of that panel on Friday, was awesome. I can't wait to see this. I can't wait to get my 5-year-old granddaughter in front of the TV with this, if her good geek parents haven't already done it. I can't wait to see what this entire youngest generation does growing up with Prodigy. I've just got all the faith in the world in those showrunners. It's a different animation style. Oh my God, some of the backgrounds, some of the planetscapes have been, and spacescapes have been so incredibly beautiful. And they've got David Mack in as their continuity, as their canon guy to help advise. Although some on that writing staff, the Benson sisters are there. Some of those writers know full well what the awesome steps they've stepped into. You heard the voice cast talk about the awesomeness of it, whether they were fans or not. That's always heartening to see. But that the writing staff knows full well what's going on here too. No one wants to be the show that, especially after the hard row that poor Discovery had because of its rough birth. It had a rougher birth than Kelvin Kirk. And a rougher life for the first 5 years there, apparently. But eventually you have a fight in the American Legion Starfleet bar, and eventually everything goes good and settles down. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? Hey, if you're not on my list, get on these surveys. They're fun. I get to cite them. I only did one push on this. Newsletter went out Thursday. If you still want to go back and find it in your email, if you missed it, go ahead and vote. It'll still register on this. I may check this in a week or two and see what people are saying after this one. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think, just give me the friggin' stories and who that, this is worse than worrying about cuff braid and ship nacelles. Really, guys? Really? The acronym, the code phrase? But if you kind of notice this kerfluffle going by, it's you know what? It's like everything else in Star Trek canon. There's no black and white easy answer. It's like what's on the ground, who came before, who's got it now, what has settled down, what went along for 20 or 30 years and suddenly got uprooted with new eyes. I really think this whole Voy movement just kind of drifted back in because we'd been wandering in the wilderness for so long. But go back, read everything in the 90s and the aughts. It was VGR, guys. It was VGR. I was part of the reason why. When I had the keys, we were not gonna damn that poor show calling it Voy. Oh, it's so Voy. Oh, that is so Voy. What do you think? I don't think you're going to see that discussion anywhere this week. I want to thank all of our Patreons. Once again, this is the end of the month. If you want to jump in and help us out, we've had some new ones. I'll catch up the side. I'll update this for next Tuesday. But I'm thanking our TTL Club members here, Blaze K, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Blake Arledge, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, and our TTL Live Wires, Rusty Harold, Hal Bjorn Gunn Johnson, Jalen Bullock, Gary Williams, Jared Cooper, Mr. Vestek, Robert McLean, and Casey Shafsky. Patreon.com/Trekland Live is the name. Those two levels Our TTL clubbers and our live wires, it's $5 and $10 a month. Patreon's full of creatives doing all kinds of things by subscription or by project. They do the billing themselves, kind of like PayPal would do, into the month. So if you want to jump in as we expand Trekland online multi-streaming, we've come a long way here just in the last 6 months, much less the last year. Really appreciate it. Of course, I always say if you want to jump into all things Trekland big time, get in with us at portal47.net. One thing that COVID's also affected this year is the Gene Roddenberry Centennial out of roddenberry.com. But look online. They're doing the most of what they can to celebrate Think Trek, the Centennial. Go read about it. See what you can do in all your online doings and Zoom boxes. Saturday brings us another live support live. If you've never listened to us, go check out our Facebook page and then listen at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 UK time. Dr. Ali and I, one of us is a real doctor, going boldly through uncertain times. And lastly, as of today, our Tuesday twofers, hey, the Trek Files is up with a new episode of my podcast from Roddenberry. This is the laptop case from our new Trekland shop at TeePublic. Some of the stuff is back here. See the travel mug? Yay. Trekwell mug back there. Oh, yes. There's the Trekland tote bag. There it is. Very nice. Those sales come around once a month or so. 35% off. Most of all, if you're watching me on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel right now. And hey, that's my Twitter, at Larry Nemecek. Facebook, folks, that's my Instagram. I'd love for you to come over and follow me there too, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. And again, portal47.net is your mini-con all year long, now that you're all so smart and know how this whole Zoom things works. Peeps, thanks so much for joining me on a Tuesday. If you're going away on the great YouTube channel afterwards, please, 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 please stay safe. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check the sources when you're reading something. In other words, stay open-minded, please. Most of all, yeah, trek well, everybody.